Hello, BookTube, and we're here for another Sunday Reads, and it's a special day today, isn't it, Brandy?
I suppose if you're going to point it out. Yeah.
What could it be?
I don't know.
You've turned what, 27 today?
Yeah, let's go with that. That sounds good. It's better than saying I've turned old today.
Well, happy bidet.
Thank
Be
you.
day.
I actually don't mind my revealing my age. I'm 49 today, as of 9:37 this morning.
Still young. What I wouldn't give to be 49 again.
You're not that much older than me. You're just in your 50s.
Yeah, but at the other end of the 50s.
Well, aren't you like 56?
No, 58.
Oh, you're 58. Okay. Okay, yeah,
Or
yeah,
is it,
you're a little.
yeah, 58. I have to think about that. Yeah, so in 2 years, I'll be 60.
That's not that old.
Well, I feel it. I feel it. That's for sure. So,
Yeah. I actually feel it too. I feel like I'm older than 49, physically, not mentally. I just feel like at what point did things start becoming an effort?
well, physically I feel 91, but in my head I used to say that I was 19 in my head.
Mhm.
Aaron's here. Hello.
Hi, Erin. Well, how old do you feel in your head these days?
Older because of the COVID. Like I feel like I've got dementia at times.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I feel about 27 internally. Like I feel like a 27-year-old person in my mind.
Yeah, no, it's like I was talking to Scott Danielson on Voxer last night, and it's like, and I knew I was starting because again, started at the conversation well. Words were coming easily, and then all of a sudden, like half an hour or 45 minutes later, I'm starting to crash, and
Mhm.
I'm struggling. I'm struggling with things, and then especially if start talking about anything of sort of that requires some kind of memory, just
Yeah.
sort of deteriorates very quickly.
Yeah, but you do fine. Like you and I have had lots of conversations, and you were perfectly easy to understand, and it was perfectly fine. Like I don't. I think it's more of a deal if it's more of a big deal to you because you knew what you were like before than it actually is to us. You know what I mean? Like when you're talking to your friends and things, like we don't notice it the way that you do. You know,
Well,
because
I can feel it because I used to be able to recall this information
yeah,
quicker and dates and things like that. So I never used to have to explain the word that I'm trying to do, say, you
yeah,
know, give a definition of it before I do it, or
yeah,
and it for the casual viewer or something like that, I guess it can make them think that I'm not very smart or I'm stupid because I get it in the comments because they make it sound like I should know this, but I try to make it sound like I do know what I'm talking about. I know everything around that, but I just can't think of the name.
yeah. Well, I think it would help you if you pinned up notes for yourself. Just like notes, tape it like you like in the beginning of YouTube, I would just tape like bullet points, things that I knew I'd probably forget. You know what I mean? Like years of publication, things like that, just so that I
Yeah,
could look really quick and see.
I try to do that now when I'm doing a video, but sometimes you sort of something else comes up while you're talking.
All right, on the fly, right? It comes to mind, and you didn't
Yeah,
expect that. Yeah, that makes
and
sense. Yeah,
especially lives are bad for that because the topic
yeah,
gets onto something and it's like, and then I'm going, never mind, because I can't get that information out to make my point.
I burped. Sorry. Yeah, I know what you mean. You know what? If you kept a like an online journal, like a blog or something like that, like just to go along with your videos and stuff, then you'd have it all in writing up there, the things that you were trying to say. You know what I mean? And maybe like while you're writing a blog entry before you do a video or a live or something like that, anything that might come up while you're writing it would be fresh in your mind and help with your recall.
It's too much work. Well, I say that sort of in a way because I only have so many hours a day to read at the moment, and anything that takes me away from that means less reading because I'm not reading as much as I want to,
Yeah,
because I should be like the kind of thing is like all I'm able to do really now is depends on the book 150 to 200 pages in the day, but I should be able to do that in a morning, like slightly into the afternoon. Then I got the rest of the day to do other things. But no,
yeah,
this takes me a little bit in the morning, rest, snoozing, a little bit in the afternoon, lots of snoozing, and a little bit, it just throughout the day. And it's every time that I'm awake that I've got to do some reading or do something else like toilet,
yeah.
you know, cooking or eating, and things like that.
Right.
So anyway, how did we get on this anyway? Uh,
I don't know. I think it's because of what we were talking about before we came on the live, probably. Yeah.
books. So I guess we both haven't read that many books this week.
No, I have read one, but you go first because your book seems more interesting. Mine was a dud.
Was okay. Well, the book that I did read is the first of the Harry's Chronicles, Rogue Harry's. Oh, I
Hold
need
on,
to. I forgot
hold the cover back up.
just a minute. I forgot something that I should be having on camera here for that. Oh, 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 oh. Oh. See, that's the other thing when you get old.
Oh, oh, it's not coming clear yet.
It probably
Back it
won't.
up just a touch. Back it up just a touch. Oh, that's a little bit better, but I can't tell what it says. Does it say Rogue?
It's Rogue, yeah. It's
Hmm.
Rogue July.
Interesting. Well, I'm a bit of a rogue. Maybe that's why I was born in July.
There, but anyway.
I was
Um,
predestined to be roguish.
this was written in or published in
Okay.
1930, Rogue Harry's.
That cover is really, really simple, but I really, really like it.
Yeah, it's quite nice. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
that's a dust jacket. What's it look like under the dust jacket?
it's paper covered. It's a reprint, just green.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, that dust jacket, I like it a lot.
Yeah, I've got to get some dust jacket protectors for it because they're not expensive. They're anything, but I just don't want them to deteriorate. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's there's four main books that are about 750 pages each. Uh, and it's a historical chronicle of a family, the
Mm.
Harris family, and this starts out in sort of early mid 1700s and goes to the late 1700s, and it's to deal mostly with the main character Francis Harris.
Mm.
He's a rogue, a rake, whatever you want to call him,
A
and
scoundrel.
yeah, in many ways, but quite complex. It's not as simple as just that he's batshit crazy. There's a lot more to him,
Is he
and
batshit crazy?
yeah, at times, yeah. But he's complex. He's quite complex, and he's got a family. He's got two daughters and a son. Well, at least when it starts out, and they move up to the whole sort of, I think it's the family's house, but it's called Harry's. So it's kind of funny where he's referred to either just as Harry's,
Mm.
and then in the same sentence they'll refer to the house as Harry's.
Oh,
So
funny.
Harry's is going to Harry's,
That's hilarious. So
but
is he's married then? Or is the wife died or
she does die throughout this, yeah,
oh,
and it gets a little strange because Hugh Walpole was a very, very popular writer during the 20s and 30s, but almost nobody really reads him now too much. I don't think. But and he's related to Horace Walpole, I believe, the Gothic writer from the 18th century. But he writes, or at least the things that I've read, he writes through a different lens. Like he looks at something, but it's a bit skewed. he sees things in a different light, and
Hmm.
it makes it kind of fresh at times, and then other times odd. Like it's hard to explain, because the yeah, it's just that it's just the character, the way like their thoughts and stuff like this seem bizarre in some
Hmm.
way, but
Is
I
it,
think they're real.
do you mean like it's like a kind of a warped perspective?
A little
Or
bit, yeah. It can be, yeah, a bit of war perspective, yeah.
okay, let me try to narrow this down. So like when you read a book that's from the point of view of an animal, it comes from a particular perspective. But then if you read, like I used to read a lot of true crime books, and it would talk about the psychology of the serial killer and these people and like the things these serial killers do make sense to them. Like they have a kind of logic. It's not good logic and it's not sane logic, but it is a kind of logic. And so these things make sense to them. So like which is it more like? Is it more like just like a change of perspective, like if you were seeing things through the eyes of a cat, or is it more like on a psychological level, like
Well,
the logic of the entire thing is off?
a bit of both, a bit of both.
Okay.
It's yeah, it's really hard to explain. I can't explain it, and I see it in some writers, but not many.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that like the thoughts that the people have too seem a bit bizarre. Like not bizarre, but they're actually, I think, more realistic. They're not just, well thought out thoughts. It's like this guy, because today you people would put so many other reasons behind this, and I'll explain this because you'll probably jump to this conclusion like people would today. But I don't think that's what it was meant. It's like the character, like I say, he's a bit strange. Like he wants to be loved, but he's doesn't want to show his emotions. He doesn't love his wife, but his wife loves him. So there's an estrangement there. He's estranged sort of from his daughters, but he's sort of close to his son. But there's a distance there as well. The son is very attached to his father, like for his whole life. But then it's like he saves this woman and gives her his coat, and I think she was pregnant at the time. But anyway, a few years later, he sees her again with her daughter, who was like 9 or 10 years old, a little girl that was with red hair, and it really
Mm-hmm.
struck him, the red hair, and there was something about this child that just sort of he was drawn to, but not. See, this is the thing. Like today, people would, make these other conclusions, but
Right.
it's not that so much. And then he sees her again when she's like 16 or 17, becoming an adult. And again, there's this attraction. There is like he wants to protect her and stuff like that. I think there's other stuff in behind it, but foremost, he just feels like wants to protect her.
So it sounds like because he helped out this woman while she was pregnant, that he feels a certain amount of responsibility toward this girl.
I think so, yeah. But then he does fall in love with this girl. Like he does fall in love with her, and there is a sexual attraction as well as she gets older. And then finally, he sees her again when she's in her 20s at some point, but she's attached to somebody else or want to marry somebody else. So he's feeling really bad about this, but that guy gets killed. She's distraught, and he says to her, if you ever are in any, difficulty, like he said this when she was actually 16 as well, that if she was ever in any difficulty, she could come to him. And she doesn't trust men because she's been used and abused her whole life, basically. But she does somehow believe that he will do that. And she does finally show up there after, like, when in her early 30s, and she marries him. He's in his
Hmm.
60s at this point, okay? So he's almost twice her age.
Right.
Um, but she doesn't love him, but he loves her, and he thinks that eventually she will sort of become attached to him. but there's this kind of psychological thing in there too that it's just it's complex, and it's
Hmm.
easy to say, oh, he's just a dirty old man that wants a young woman. There's, I think that's part of that, but it's deeper than that. There's more things, and that's how I mean that there's a different. It's skewed a little differently. That there's so much happening with this, and also too, he describes, like, he takes, like, it's 750 pages, okay, and he describes the landscape. He describes what's going on in a lot of detail, and almost an extra character. There's two other characters in this novel. The rain and mud are almost have become characters in this novel,
Interesting.
because where it is, and the house is almost like the house of Usher. It's crumbling around him.
Mm,
It's crumbling. There's
yeah.
rats everywhere. There's
Right.
mice and everything, and
You
it's
know,
just really crumbling.
but in the House of Usher, like you don't get the sense that the house itself is a personality, is its own entity. You don't get that sense until the end. But I do know what you're talking about because Stephen King does that. Like in Salem's Lot, for example, he talks about the town as if the town itself is its own entity and its own personality. So like I'm assuming that it's probably the same thing that you're talking about, where mud and rain become sort of like their own entities,
Well,
their
yeah,
own conscious entities.
because there's so much of it, and it
Mm.
impacts so much on the environment, the people, and the land. Like, he spends 30 years trying to make this farm work, and you can't grow anything. He doesn't do anything. The house is crumbling, but he won't leave, and his son
Interesting.
won't leave his father, because he made a promise to his mother that he would never leave his father.
Huh. Interesting. And why did she make him promise that if she didn't really love him?
No, she loved him. He did not
Oh,
love
he
her.
didn't love her. Oh, okay, I see. Okay. Yeah, I got that turned around.
Yeah. And he
Interesting.
also had a mistress as well, that when they moved to that place, he took his mistress along.
How
And
did the
then,
wife feel about that?
she did not like it, but then he got tired of her. And while they were at some, I think, fair, I think it was, that he took his son to, that he basically sells his mistress for like a few shillings or something like that, openly.
Wow.
So, that's what I mean. He's a rogue in that way, and there's, like, there's a witch that lives with him, a witch, and he thinks of her as a witch as well. It's really layered and complex in many ways. It's just,
So
I really enjoy it.
I'm assuming that the focus of it is the relationship dynamics between all the characters and all of the underlying psychology that's driving them. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, basically, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Interesting. That
yeah,
probably
and
is really interesting.
yeah, it is. It's just like, I think Aaron was saying, that it's the language, because he does, it's not your modern, the way somebody would write, or even in his, in narration, there is sometimes a weird, word order, that it's sometimes you stop and you go, oh, that's a little different.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's, I don't think it's that's, I think that's typical of the writer more than the time.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of stuff
When
in
were
here.
they published?
It was 1930, so it was written
1930. Okay.
in the 20s, in the
Oh,
late
okay.
20s.
I see.
Uh, but and then, he, but I think, yeah, I think it's more of him, than anything else. It's his style. Uh,
Interesting.
yeah, no, it's just, I really like it. I've read other stuff, and I'm going to read the second one, called, Judith's Paris. Is the second one, starting tomorrow, or maybe tonight. This is the same length, even though it's thinner. It's not as thick.
Well, I have a question. If the first one follows this guy all the way till essentially his old age,
Yeah,
then what's the second book about?
Judith.
Oh, Who's Judith?
Judith. Well, you see, here's a, and this isn't the complete
Oh,
family tree.
damn, he's got a family tree and everything.
Yeah, the last book has a 6 foot long family tree, basically.
Interesting.
Um, Let me see here. Judith is his daughter by the woman,
Mistress?
not mistress, his second wife, the
Oh,
red
okay.
haired woman, and so that's her. She's Judith. So
Now,
it's
see, it might have been important to mention when you were talking about his fascination with the girl that he. Oh no, you are talking about that girl. The
yeah,
redheaded second wife is that girl.
yeah,
Okay, okay.
yeah,
See, in my mind, I was thinking, oh well, he had another wife. Then maybe something about the red hair, the girl reminded him of her. But no, that is her. So
yeah.
okay, got ya.
Oh, yeah.
I'm on board.
And the thing is too that they, like to her, to him, I guess she's beautiful, but the way he describes her is she's not that beautiful. She just has this, flaming red hair.
Mm,
And she, like, when she first comes there, she's almost starving to death. So she's really skinny, and she's always stayed skinny, and she looks older than her age. So it's like,
interesting.
everybody else's views of her aren't that she's not
Mm.
beauty, or anything like that. So he's not attracted in that way. Like I say, there's more to it than just
So
superficial.
does he find her physically attractive?
Oh, I think he does. Yeah, yeah, I think he does. Yeah, but it's more than that.
Right.
It's weird. It's weird for sure, but it's a weirdness that I can believe and understand. I guess I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like the kind of book I would enjoy reading because I like a lot of delving into the psychology of characters and stuff like that. I like it when the characters seem like they're more like they're real people, instead of the some kind of rubber stamp type of character that's in a book. Not that there aren't plenty of good books that have rubber stamp characters, you know what I mean? But I do enjoy a really good like character driven story.
Yeah, and that's
And that
that's what
sounds
this
like
is.
that is.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I say, there's a lot of stuff. Like I think today people would find it tedious to read all this other stuff. It's like he goes on, I guess would be the way he goes on about things, and you could cut out probably almost 3/4 of it and still have the plot and the story. But I think you'd be missing so much else because it's all this other stuff that gets that is the environment and the surroundings, which then works on the psychology of the characters as well. It's in the Lake District here, uh,
Oh,
you know.
awesome.
So yeah, and I understand about the rain. It's
Yeah.
it's like here, it's just constant rain.
So like that's actually my has always been my impression of England is that it's just always raining over there all the time. So I'm wondering now if it's maybe just the northern portion where it rains all the time and the southern portion not as much.
Well, I thought I'd say it rained a lot when I was in the southern, sort of more southern, but not like here.
Okay.
And I think the way they're describing it there is even worse than here.
That's funny.
So no, I if I haven't said it's Roy from Roy Reads Anything sort of initiated this. He first, like, he sent me just on Voxer a picture of a bunch of the Rogue Harry's covers that he collected, and I'm going, oh, are you gonna read that? Are you gonna be reading that?
Funny.
I want in. I want in
That's funny.
because I think he probably realized that I'd probably be the only person, or one of the few people in this sort of corner of BookTube that would know who the author was.
Yeah. And what's the author's name again?
Hugh Walpole.
Oh, okay.
And what's Steve here? Surely your super popular new prime minister will sort out the rain situation. Yeah, well, if the rain is stymied by somebody who's like a robot and has no personality, then it'll be scared. It'll be scared to death.
That's funny.
But Steve, you must have read Hugh Walpole. You must have read the Harry's Chronicles.
Wait, I'll be right back.
What is your thought on it? Hi, Andrew. And yeah, Brandy's just run off there for a minute. But yeah, that's basically the other thing that I've read is for Rocket Summer, and basically it's um, I've been reading Simak, short stories, 1930s. Oh yeah, read you. Well, you dated him.
Okay,
Yeah,
what did
yeah.
I,
Well,
what did I miss?
go right.
What did I miss?
Andrew and I just saying I was reading um, Simak for Simak Summer. I mean Rocket Summer. And
Rocket
Steve,
Summer.
I asked Steve about Hugh Walpole. He said, "Read Hugh Walpole. I dated him."
That's great. Yeah, nice, Steve. Oh.
Yeah, the monster raving loony party should have been elected. Yeah, there is people. It's the one thing that is kind of interesting about British politics. You've got things like this. There is a monster raving loony party. There
Yeah.
actually is. You can vote for them if you want to.
Wait a minute, wait a minute. You don't think we have a monster fucking lunatic party over here? I mean, their candidate is fucking Donald Trump, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, and this is the name of it. And then you've got actually, I don't know, did Aaron will know, did Buckethead run this time for like there's a guy, yeah, he just wears black and he wears a bucket for his head. He's got Buckethead.
Oh my God. That's funny.
Brandy, you missed my detailed description of things you will find. No, yeah. That would be the very old audience. And
Hilarious.
I know if you Walpole, he probably would be there.
Steve.
But yeah, so yeah, Simak short stories, 1930s Simak short stories, which have been a lot of fun. I've got one more to read behind and making videos of them. So I'm struggling with whether I should lump a bunch together or just do videos for each short story. I might lump the Mars stories together.
I'm going to try to do my Rocket Summer Stories vlog style, since I'm just going to read like short stories, like one short story a week, essentially. I'll probably end up reading more. I think once I get into this omnibus, I'm going to end up really being into it. But I'm going to try my vlog style and like see if that works. And then if that doesn't work, then I'll just do a regular video about them. But you know what I have noticed? This is like from this camera angle, because I moved it down because it's too bright. This window is like bothering my eyes, so I moved the camera down. But anyway, this shelf right here stands out to me a lot because, you know, my shelves have been in the process of being reorganized for months now, and I've just never gotten back to it. So this shelf is like still empty, and I'm like, I really need to fill that shelf.
That's the problem. When you get shelf space, it calls out to be filled.
Well, I don't actually have shelf space. Like the books are all stacked up all over the house, actually. So what's going on because I haven't finished reorganizing that. But that space right there is going to be for my my complete collection of that Gardner Dozier's Dozois, whatever it is. The best of the year's best science fiction. Like I have all of them. I have like the whole collection. And so I'm going to put them in that shelf. So now, come on, now tell me you're jealous about that me having the whole collection.
Well, yeah, I've mentioned that before. Aaron said Buckethead didn't run, but Lord Binface, Binface did in London. Lord Binface.
What's Binface mean?
Bin, like a garbage bin. I'm assuming that's what it means.
Well.
And Steve says we 100% have a monster party in this country. It's led by a convicted felon, rapist, fraud,
insurrectionist. So it's easy to spot.
I used to have to keep bottom shelves empty so the dogs wouldn't get
down
there.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a cat, like, I'm a cat person, Steve, and I know how much you love cats. But like I at one time had a cat that would spray stuff. It took me like, I don't know, 6 months to break that cat of spraying stuff. I had books on the bottom shelves of my bookcases, and my cat sprayed the books, and I was so upset. You can imagine. But yeah, I had to do the same thing. I had to empty out the bottom shelf of my bookcases because of that cat for like 6 months.
My cat Dylan, he knew what pushed my buttons, and when he attacked the books, he knew I would get my attention, and nothing else really would. So him
Mm.
scratching at the books did it.
Yeah.
Andrew says I'm a bit behind, still halfway through Dune Messiah.
Mm.
Get started on Rocket Summer. Well,
Well,
Dune Messiah is 68, so that fits in for the last week, I think.
don't feel bad. I have not started Rocket Summer either. I will be this evening, but I also have not yet started.
Well, my Rocket Summer is basically 2 to 3 days per week for the rest of the month because I'm reading the Harry
Yeah.
Chronicles.
Well, Book Trek takes priority for me, so I'm just doing like one short story a week. I guess the bean is well behaved, huh?
But Steve hasn't mentioned what he thinks of Hugh Walpole. If people don't
Whoops.
shape up with Rocket Summer, Michael K. Vaughn will cancel you all.
Well, I'm about to cancel you, Steve. Where are the Book Trek videos?
Hi, Rich. Hi, Richard. Hi, Richard. See, that's maybe that was going to say that what people do. Hi, Richard.
Hi, Mark.
Mark. But yeah, well, I think 11 short stories for the first week is not bad.
That's great.
Not bad.
Well,
I haven't done the videos.
while I'm waiting for Steve to make a remark about me canceling him over his lack of Book Trek videos, I'm going to briefly tell you about the one book I managed to read this week called The Firefly Dance, which was 4 novellas. And the only reason I picked it up was because I am like obsessed with Sarah Addison Allison. No, sorry, I'm starting to feel that friggin' hard lemonade I'm drinking. Sarah Addison Allen. I've read 6 of her books. I love her. She's like becoming one of my favorite authors. But this little collection had a novella by her in it. Oh, this is terrible. This is like maybe the worst book I've read so far this year. I couldn't even finish any of the 4 novellas because they were boring the crap out of me. I would get halfway through one and then I'd have to skip to the next one. And I did that. Even Sarah Addison Allen's novella, I even skipped halfway through that. And I actually probably got I probably got over half, more like 60 to 70% through. And only because it was her. And I couldn't take it anymore. So my one book for the week was an absolute dud. So depressing.
Here's another reason to cancel Steve. He says Hugh Walpole stinks. He's boring, pretty, crawling with gonorrhea. And everyone who likes him at work is Bolshevik. Well, I guess I'm a Bolshevik because I do like him.
Yeah, and
He's
Sean has
nerdy.
now made me interested in reading it too.
Golem Muad'Dib is here. I'm doing okay. I think we're doing okay. Steve's not doing okay though. But is that it? That's all you? Is that all you read?
That's it. That is it. I mean, I planned on reading, The Scarlet Plague by Jack London for Rocket Summer out of here, but I just didn't get to it. So I will be reading it tonight though, because this is the end of the week and I want to make sure I get this in on deadline.
Yeah. Well, the last one for me is Hermit of Mars in 1939. Astounding. June 1939.
Nice. Oh, that reminds me, I have to compliment Steve for reading a Hal. He read Mission of Gravity, which is not actually my favorite Hal, but it's still good. But yeah, he read Hal and did a whole video on it. I was thrilled, and it almost made up for his lack of Book Trek videos.
What, you liked it?
He did. He loved it. He loved it. Yeah.
Not day drinking. Well, I'm not drinking anything alcoholic, but it's not day here anymore. It's 7:30 at night.
Well, it's my birthday, so I'm allowed to get hammered on my birthday.
Yeah, this week. Well, the whole month is going to be like that. It'll be one book per week. Well, actually, no. I think next week I'm for the 1940s. I'll be reading a Simak novel that he rewrote. It wasn't published till the 50s, but it was written in the 40s. So I'm gonna, if I could find it, I'm gonna read that.
What was the one you were telling me about? I think it was the Goblin Empire or something. Oh, the Goblin Reservation. Okay, I think I'm gonna read that this month because that sounds like it will be good.
It is good, and I just came across something because I was trying to find a reference for something else, and I came across him saying that it was one of the funnest stories that he'd written. That it was enjoyable to write.
Interesting.
And Eric says correctly here, everyone he hates Walpole is a Finian and the Seventh Day Adventist. And Mark says happy birthday.
Thank you, Mark.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Aaron says happy birthday.
Thank you.
I've now been shamed, so I'll read a Star Trek book tonight and add a book Trek video to my roster tomorrow.
Great, because Steve, I love your Star Trek videos. Your Star Trek videos are among my favorite videos that you make, for obvious reasons.
If you made some good videos of Hugh Walpole and C.P. Snow, then there might, he might come up in my estimation.
Well, he also threw in that favorable, Hal video. So, Steve, as long as he puts up some Star Trek, will be back in my good graces.
Andrew says he's looking at his shelves and thinking about reading some of the myriad universe anthologies for. I have no idea what they are referring to.
He's talking about the Mirror Universe. A lot of people don't like the Star Trek Mirror Universe. I personally love the Mirror Universe. So Andrew, I am all for that. You go.
Well, he doesn't stink. See, these books don't smell.
Steve, I think you're thinking about yourself. You're the one who stinks. You've admitted it many times openly. Oh no. Now I have to read this book. I have to read this book because I have to know who's right. Is Sean right or is Steve right?
Well, you can get I think the Delphi Classics edition of his complete works, which will be around 14,500 pages, I think.
Is it an annotated edition?
No.
Okay.
No, that's the thing.
Does Delphi make annotated editions?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah. See, that's the one.
Mixed up.
That's the one thing, because they'll talk about a tarn in here. What's a tarn?
A tarn? Is this now? A tarn. Now I'm thinking of. Holy crap! Oh, the Gorian Saga. I'm thinking of the Gorian Saga. You're talking about a tarn. I'm thinking about the mount in the Gorian Saga.
Well, the mountain is part of it because it's a lake. The tarn is a lake in the Lake District, and then you got things like you got other names for things, and it's and that's probably for a lot of people if they're not English. Well, I don't even know if younger people even in England here would know these things if they're not living.
Oh my god! If it's got a lot of alternate words and phrases without annotations, then it'll take me forever to get through that book because me, I'm going to stop and look up every last one of them.
No, there's not a lot, and you don't need to know really what that is. But then you do find it out when the guy gets thrown in the tarn and he drowns. Then you can figure out what it is.
I'd still look it up because a tarn could mean many different kinds of bodies of water, so I'd have to look it up. It's a compulsion. I won't be able to stop myself from looking it up. Even if you can extrapolate from context, I will still look it up because I need to know exactly what it is to visualize when I'm reading these things.
Well, it's the same. It's the same thing as what are those things that you have in your backyard that's probably unique to sort of Kansas or area where they stick to your clothes.
Are you talking about stickers?
Exactly. You say stickers to somebody who's not around there, they're thinking of things that you stick on, like a little picture you stick on something. So it's the same thing. Like I had to ask you, what the hell are you talking about?
Well, I wouldn't know the local vernacular of that book, so I'd have to look it up and find out.
If you would have said a burr, like burrs, then I would know what that is, and that's probably
A
exactly what
burr?
yeah.
Isn't a burr like a specific kind of like a specific kind of sticker?
Well, I think it's from burdock. Is it from burdock? Maybe.
Because when
I'm
you
not
say
sure.
burrs, I'm thinking of the big ones that have the spines on them, but they're not like the stabbing kind, like a sticker is. They're more like a Velcro type of. They have more like a Velcro type of
Yeah,
effect.
yeah. They're not that big, but they're usually about this. But then there's smaller ones that were still called burrs as well. They're tiny, like they're the size of an apple seed, and
Oh,
they're small ones as well.
I see. Well, here in America, we call them stickers. Actually, that might be a Midwest thing for all I know.
That's what I'm saying. These names are either northern England or specifically to Yorkshire in the New Zealand slang 100 years ago. A loser. Where is Walpole? Where is Walpole?
That is funny. Man, I'm so disappointed that neither one of us read more. I mean, I guess your book was really extensive, so that makes sense. But my book was like, I don't know, 300 pages or 350, maybe 400 pages. I don't know. So I don't have an excuse.
Well, I didn't read as much as I should have because even the short stories will add up to probably 350 pages or so out of a book, give or take. And this was 750, so 1,100 pages. That's what I read this
That's
week.
pretty good.
And just think that if I can get these, but you see, I'm going to be interrupted. I'm going to have somebody here next week that's just going to interrupt me all the time.
Who's
Not
coming
this
next
week,
week?
coming up with on the from the 12th onward.
Is Aaron coming up?
Yeah.
Ah.
So that following week for the
Bar
50th
your door,
week.
Sean. Aaron's a troublemaker. I know.
So I may not be able to read. I definitely won't be able to read 150 pages a day because I can barely stay awake to do that now.
Mm-hmm. About how many hours per day do you end up reading?
5 hours, maybe if I'm lucky, 6.
Oh, okay.
Somewhere
That's
between
pretty
4 and
good.
6 hours.
That's pretty good. That's more hours in a day that I usually end up being having the time to read. So that's pretty good.
Yeah,
I've
but
been
you
like
read
resorting
faster.
to audiobooks. Do what?
You read faster than I do. That's the thing. Everybody
Well,
seems to
I
say
might.
you think I read fast. I don't read that fast. It's just
Uh,
I spend more time doing it.
Yeah. Well, I read pretty fast. I don't read as fast as I used to. I mean, if I read, I would miss stuff. But so I had to kind of I'm slower than I used to be when I was younger, which sounds so I'm still not used to the idea that I'm like old enough that I'm starting to be affected by my age. But I've also resorted to doing audiobooks, like if I'm doing chores, if I'm driving around running errands, or I'm in the pool or something like that, then I do audiobooks just so that I can at least get through the books that I'm wanting to get through. So, which I've really been enjoying. It's not as good as like physically reading a book, but yeah, the last year I've really enjoyed those audiobooks.
Well, I've now
Mhm.
gone back to sometimes doing what I used to do is and because I don't sleep for very long or rest, so I'm in bed. So I get about 2 hours, and then I've got to sort of either get up or be awake for a little while after I go to the toilet, so about 20 minutes or so. So now,
Hmm.
instead of turning the light on and having the book and sit up and read, because I do have the Delphi edition of Hugh Walpole that I can sit and read in the dark about 5 pages maybe, and then on my tablet, and then go try to sleep again. So throughout the night, I might get 20, 30 pages extra, you know. No,
Well,
probably more. Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, about maybe, yeah, 30 pages I might get extra. So that adds to things as well.
Well, that's nice. And you've talked about that book enough that I'm convinced that I should read it. But I especially need to read it so I know if I'll like it. Because like, who's right here, you or Steve? That's a toss up. You know. But yeah, I think I'm gonna hunt that book down and read it. I would like to have an edition like yours because even though that cover's really plain, I really like that.
Yeah, all four like this. The prequels aren't, but I definitely won't be getting the prequels this month.
Mm.
Gavin's here. Genre book.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to him on Voxer before we started here, and I was thinking we're probably the only two that goes in any depth into like the history of science fiction in the 30s, 20s, 30s, and 40s. Like there's not many. I can't think of anybody else that actually goes does that on book
That delves into the 20s and 30s of.
science fiction, the history of science fiction.
Oh, I don't delve too much into the history of it, but I do like the stories. I
Yeah,
do like those early science fiction stories quite a lot.
yeah, but there's people that will do the stories, but not the history of, or talk about the history of a magazine and stuff like that. And Gavin does that.
Yeah,
So, and
yeah,
but
and
yeah, I
I'm
can't
glad
think
that
of
they're.
anybody else.
Well, I'm actually not familiar with Gavin or his channel, but you, of course, I know you're always my go-to source for that. Well, you and Scott Danielson. Scott Danielson knows a lot too. Like I'll always go to one of the two of you for my science fiction information that I don't know.
Yeah, he's been at. I guess
Mhm.
he could be driving home now or something. He was
Yeah,
at a convention in Utah, and
yeah.
he was saying that there was a good talk about uh,
Publishing.
by Stephen Barnes.
Oh, Stephen Barnes.
Stephen Barnes, yeah,
Yeah.
and his wife. I forget who she is, but she's a writer as well.
Hmm.
And there was like talking about how he teamed up with Larry Niven, and so that sounded kind of interesting.
Oh yeah, he told me about that too, and he was talking about how the guy's tips were, like if you submit a story and the publisher doesn't want it, you know what I mean, don't try to change it to try to get it published, just move on to the next thing, and only change the story if the author or if the editor tells you, if you change this we'll publish it, that kind of thing. I thought that was really really interesting. I mean, I cannot write stories. I'm not a storyteller, but I thought it was really interesting, like hearing those tips about that kind of a process, and what it's like.
Yeah, but you speak to another writer, and they'll say the thing that he says not to do.
I'm sure that's true.
But yeah, like the second published story that Simak had was not his first written story, but it went the rounds. It went the rounds. It was rejected like 5 times, and then he got his first story published. Then he resent it to the magazine, the first magazine that he sent it to, and then it was accepted.
Oh
And
my
then
god. Mhm. That's funny. Hal has a similar story. Like his first story published was not his first story that he tried to get published. That's probably common, I would imagine.
yeah, like the for Simak, he I think is well, it's the first story that he sent in. He says was in like 1928, I think it was, or 29, um, called Cubes of Ganymede. I
Mm.
don't know what it's about, and he's not really said what it's about. He just says it was bad, and um, it was to Amazing Stories. It was accepted, but it was the time of the changeover from Hugo Gernsback, where he was ousted from Amazing Stories, and then T. O'Connor Sloan was taken over, and then they held it for like a year and a half, and then sent it back to him saying, "Oh, it's old fashioned now. We don't want it," and
Oh,
it's disappeared. Nobody's found it. But then in 1930s, he wrote some other ones, and those are the ones. There's probably two of them that were then finally published in 1932. But after he wrote another one, which was his first published story, the World of the Red Sun, which is a time travel story similar to H.G. Wells' Time Machine.
I absolutely love H.G. Wells. I'm kind of surprised, but I mean, I read a lot of H.G. Wells when I was real young, but then I didn't read him anything by him again until just like a couple of years ago. And I'm just like, he's like moved up on my list to one of my favorite science fiction authors. I really, really like his stories. He is so good. I'm just like, why didn't I realize that when I was younger?
See, I'm a bit surprised with that because you didn't like Simak so much for his philosophizing stuff. H.G. Wells just drones on and he proselytizes ideas and the
Yeah,
philosophy.
but it's the way it's done. Like the way, and like I said, I don't have a final judgment on Sinmac because I've only read the, 2 or 3 books, whatever it is. So like I don't, but the way that it's done in what I've read of Simak versus H.G. Wells, it's way more entertaining when H.G. Wells does it.
No, I think you'll like though Goblin Reservation.
Yeah, I'm gonna give that. I think I'm gonna read that this month because it sounds like something I would enjoy.
Yeah, it's short as well, so it's like most of his novels are short. So that's the only thing that I'm not reading this month is his first novel that he gave to Campbell for Astounding Cosmic Engineers, because it was serialized in 3 months, and then in 50s Gnome Press published it as a book, but he changed it. So, and as I was saying to you, I just because of when I read the serialized version, I'm gonna have to read. I don't have to, but I want to read it immediately after or along with it because then I can compare to see how the changes he made.
Well, Sean, what Star Trek book are you gonna read this week?
None. I don't have any Star Trek books. I think don't have any Star Trek books.
Now, well, what Babylon 5 book are you going to read this book in its place?
I know where a couple of them are, but I don't know where they all are. So
you know what I would love to see you do, and it's just a suggestion, but I would love to see you read whatever Babylon 5 books you have on hand, like some month, and then like come on and talk about them in detail, what you liked about them and stuff like that, what you perceive as their flaws. You know what I mean? Things like that. I would love to hear you talk about those Babylon 5 books.
Yeah, well, I could because, like I say, I could read the trilogy. The trilogies are the ones that I like. The trilogies and the Psychor trilogy. Your favorite part of the series?
Yeah, I hate all that Psychor shit. Oh man,
it has one of the best evil characters that there ever has been written for television.
Well, it's worth watching just for the Walter Koenig,
Yeah. So and when he was dead tired of doing Star Trek, he loved doing Babylon 5.
Funny. Did you just say Star Trek?
Yeah, Star Trek. No, Star Trek.
Okay. Where is Jenny? I just realized Jenny's not here.
Probably working.
Working. That's not a good enough excuse.
I know Summer is, because I was seeing if she was available, but she's working.
Yeah. Summer's working nights now. She's a busy girl.
So what are you going to read for 40s, I guess? Or are you still going to read the
Well, yeah, I'm gonna because this covers the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, well, I guess, all the way up to 1939 is week 1, but this covers everything through the 1950s. So everything that
only up to 1952.
Up to 1952, right? So everything I read for the first 3 weeks is coming out of here because I would really like to read like all of the stories in this book. So this is like a really good excuse to start going through these stories. But for the 1960s, I'll probably read some Hal.
You could read the Simak book for the month, which is All
Oh,
Flesh is
that's
Grass.
was that a 1960s?
Yeah,
Oh wait,
All Flesh
what's
is
the?
Grass.
Oh no, 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 I'm not going to read that. I was thinking of the Goblin Reservation actually, since you
Yeah,
brought
it's,
it.
that's 73, I think, or something
Okay,
like that.
I'll just read some Hal.
But the Goblin Reservation, you should read it though.
Yeah, I will. I think I might read that this month because it sounds like something that I'd really enjoy. And especially since you just read it, it means it's fresh on your mind too. So we could probably have a good discussion about that.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna now go up, I think, in my favorites of his because it's just so fun.
Yeah.
It's on many levels, and I'm seeing little bits and pieces in the 1930 stories that are in almost every other in all his novels that came after. There's so many little things that appear, and some of them aren't the greatest. Like his second published story isn't the greatest, but he never talked about that. He talked about his second, excuse me, second last. Uh, was it the second last one? Yeah, the second last published story in the 30s. He thought was horrible, but it's not. I just finished reading it this afternoon, and it's like it's not bad. It's basically got a tribble in it. It's got a tribble.
Dribble.
Yeah,
Interesting.
Martian tribble.
So he thought that about Goblin Reservation?
No, no,
So,
this story that I'm talking about.
oh,
The
okay. What's
last
the story?
second
I'm
last
sorry.
story.
I spaced out. This alcohol is getting to me, and I kind of spaced out in the middle of that. So what was the book?
It was a short story called Hunger. No, wait a minute. Um, it was a Mars one. It was a spaceship coming back from Mars, and there was all the astronauts were dead, but there was this like little fur ball that was a Martian animal.
Nice. And you can't remember the title?
Um, yes. Well, in other words, no, I can't remember the title, but
But you have it on hand.
uh, Madness from Mars.
Madness from Mars. Okay. I might have to re-ask you about that later, but that sounds like a fun story.
And yeah, it was good. I don't know why he thought it was a bad story.
Hmm,
Like he just thought it was a bad story. But his
interesting.
second one that was published isn't the greatest because Martians are slaves, and so are the Selenites. The Moon Men are slaves,
Mhm.
and the main character kills most of them in their uprising. And
Oh
he
my goodness.
stabs them and all this kind of stuff, and he is ruthless to keep them down, to keep them as slaves. It's
Wow.
very unlike Simak, many
Mhm.
ways. Like you would not think it was him, uh, you know, because of that storyline. But also too,
Wow.
he was writing for the time. Like this is the kind of stuff that was popular
Right.
at the time of the writing. So, but it's just yeah, it's uncharacteristically, it's not him.
Interesting.
But Mars is almost are big part of the stories. Like 4 or 5 of the stories have to do with Mars in the 30s.
Interesting. I've thought before, there's so many stories about Mars, and most of them are the, classic sci-fi, or not sci-fi, but classic SF. That I have thought about doing a thing where I read as many Mars stories as I can fit into a month. I've thought about doing that before.
Well, yeah, I was going to do something was to read like yeah, I was going to do sort of three planets.
Hmm.
Mars was one. Read the earliest stuff. Read some of the Edgar Rice Burroughs stuff. Read some of the stuff to 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and basically end up probably with either Kim Stanley Robinson's Mars trilogy or and including that would be Pamela Sargent's No, that's sorry. Hers is Venus. Sorry, and then Venus was another one, and then the moon was another one.
Mm.
Sorry, it's my drug time,
Gotta take the pills.
but I was late taking my morning one, so
Ah,
I probably won't take them immediately. But yeah, no, I was going to do three things. I was going to do Venus, Mars, Venus, and the moon. I was going to do that kind of thing.
yeah, I would really like to read Ben Bova's like Planet Tour books. I have a few of them. I don't have them all, but I have a few of them, and eventually I'll collect them all. And once I have them all, I think I'm going to do a little reading project
There's over
where I read
20.
all those. Oh,
There's
there's
over
over 20.
I
Holy
think
shit! I
so.
didn't know that.
He expanded them so much, but that would be like he did a Venus one and a Mars one, so that would be on my thing. And he probably did one that was I don't know, a moon one as well, but definitely the Venus and Mars would be in there for my thing.
Oh
And
my God. I didn't know there were 20 of them. I thought there was just like one for every planet plus like the moon. And I feel like there was something else that I saw in there, but I didn't realize there were 20. Well, I probably won't read all 20. Maybe I'll just read like the main books, like I'll look it up and find out.
Gardner Dozois did an interesting 2 volumes called Old Mars and Old Venus. It was they were published in the 80s or 90s, but he got writers to write new stories, but like the
In the
old,
style of the old ones?
yeah, be prior to knowing what Venus was. Because you see, one of the stories that I read from Simac here was called Hunger Death, and it's set on Venus, and there's Iowa farmers on Venus,
Nice.
and
Nice.
which was kind of neat because what it was, he wrote a Western story. It's a Western on Venus in New Chicago, where there's saloons, they're carrying 6 guns, there's whorehouses, they're farmers, and there's a doctor, the doc who's an alcoholic. He drinks a Martian alcoholic drink called Boko,
Oh my
which he
God.
comes up in another story or two as well. It's a Western on Venus.
Oh, that sounds fun. That sounds fun. Okay, now I want to read these anthologies. That sounds like a lot of fun. Mhm.
Yeah, no, they're like I say, they're not great, but they're fun to read. But like I say, you see things that are similar because that was the Hunger Death was for Campbell because he wanted to write about normal people, so farmers, doctor, a reporter.
Mhm.
He had quite a few reporters in the one, and there's the one called Rule 18 that's the one that Isaac Asimov didn't like, and he wrote a letter in and saying that
Oh,
it
yeah,
was disjointed.
yeah.
But
Right.
then he reread it and then saw the spaces. See, in these here books that have reprinted, they don't put the bloody spaces in, so it does read very disjointed. And I think
Mhm.
even with the spaces, it is a bit disjointed because he does too much. It's too much.
Yeah.
But it's basically rule 18 is the rule 18 is it's like there's football games between Mars and Earth.
Mm.
And rule 18 is that you got to go back 10 generations for the player that's playing like for Mars. They have to have 10 generations of Mars living on Mars and 10 generations on Earth. So the guy goes back in time and takes the best football players of throughout history, takes them back 30,000 years or whatever into the past or a long time in the past and trains them, then brings them up for a game.
Oh my gosh.
That's my first summer sport video.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's good. I like that premise.
And then the next one is the 1940s one where there's polo, space polo.
Mm. Space
So
polo.
space polo. A bookkeeper. He's a bookkeeper, and
Mm.
he gets roped into playing some space polo
Oh my
around
gosh.
Saturn, I think.
Oh, that sounds like fun. Well, I'll be looking forward to what you have to say about them.
Gavin knows, yeah, Mr. Meek.
Is that one of the characters?
Yeah, well, it's just two stories that Sebek did, and I don't know why he didn't do any more because they're fun stories. They're Mr.
Mhm.
Meek,
Oh,
um, and
that's-
they're really cool. But that's what for the summer of sport. I thought, hey, I can get Simac in.
yeah.
And the other thing that was kind of interesting was um, in this last one, the Madness from Mars. It's like the fourth spaceship that was sent out to this is the first one that's come back from Mars, and like the first three or first two were destroyed, and the third one disappeared without a trace.
Wow.
Premise of Babylon 5. The
Mhm.
first three stations were destroyed
Mhm.
with a trace, and the fourth one disappeared without a trace.
Mhm. Nice.
Not quite.
Inspiration.
Yeah. So
Oh.
cool. But yeah, no, I'm surprised that well, I'm not surprised that Gavin knows Mr. Meek, but if anybody else would have got that, I would have been very surprised.
Mhm. Well, I certainly didn't. I'm not familiar with it at all.
No,
Mhm.
see, the thing is, a lot of these stories, there's a few, like you were surprised that I hadn't read all these stories, and there's quite a few from the 30s. I didn't because a few of them had only been reprinted in these new collections, a couple of them, and then
Mhm.
one of them was reprinted here, and then in another limited edition, which I didn't have. I now have the book, but it was only in the original one. So there's like four stories in the 30s that were almost impossible to get unless you were able to get the original publication magazine. And
Yeah.
even his very first story, it's been reprinted several times. It's been reprinted in fanzines, but
Mhm.
its first big republication was Isaac Asimov's Before the Golden Age. That if you want something with some good stories from the 30s, then that's the one you want to get is Before the Golden Age by Isaac Asimov, and he prefaces it with um, uh, autobiographical material, what he thought of the story, what he was doing well when that story was when he was reading it and stuff like that. And it's really really good. It's a
Oh,
great
that's
collection.
definitely one to look into.
And if you well, you would have saw it because I did it on my but you didn't watch. Nobody has watched my or hardly anybody has watched
Mhm.
uh my anthology video.
I have not watched hardly any booktube period for
Well,
a
nobody
while.
had because as I said, nobody's watched that.
Well,
And I don't know
for
because it's
me,
30 minutes long. And I was thinking of breaking it up into two pieces, but I thought, well, 30 minutes isn't too bad.
yeah,
But yeah, yeah, hardly anybody's watched it.
nobody loves you. You better go eat some worms, man. Are you familiar with that rhyme, actually?
Is that from the book that you got me to read, or
No, no. When I said you better go eat some worms, there's like an old rhyme. It was nobody likes me, everybody hates me, so I think I'll eat some worms. Big fat juicy ones, little tiny squirmy ones. Oh how they let's see. Oh how they tickle when I eat them.
no? Don't know that.
Oh lordy. Well, you
Anyway,
missed out. You missed out on some good childhood stuff, Sean.
I never was a child.
Mhm. That's probably true. Mm.
But yeah, I'm really glad that I'm decided to do the 30s stuff. I'm way overdue reading through Simax in a chronological. It's the great thing is doing it in chronological order. That's why I hate these. I like these 14 volumes of short stories, but it's not chronological order, and
Mm.
it's really great to read them in chronological order of the
Yeah,
public. You know, um, it's just it is fantastic because
yeah.
and there's so many things that there's a wealth of writing or discussion of his writing, things that he brought forward in the 1930s in his very first stories that aren't the greatest stories, but that he reworked for the rest of his
Yeah.
life, his ideas. And
Interesting.
it's like you say, I'm not saying that he's unique in that, but it's just he's done that. Other writers have done it, and
Yeah.
people have written about other writers and what they did. But
Yeah.
as far as I can tell, nobody's written about Simak doing that.
Mm. Well, you should have been the one to write up some kind of book about Simak.
Well, I it depends if I. It's a lot of work I got to do, but I might try to write something like I'll pick a few themes that he does then, and then trace them through his
Hmm.
writing. And I'm hoping. See, this is the thing. I'm hoping to get it into his nonfiction writing too. His journalism as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I didn't actually know about Simak's journalism, but something I didn't realize until just a few years ago is that Edgar Allan Poe's main writing was journalistic in nature. Actually, didn't know that until a few years ago. And I know that kind of seemed out of the blue, but it just reminded me of that.
Well,
And
like Simak is living for from basically early 30s up until 1976, 77 or 78. And when he retired, that's how he made his living, was being a
yeah,
journalist.
yeah, well, it makes sense too. Yeah.
So everything he wrote was part time. He just
Hmm.
wrote part time, and he wrote
Yeah.
basically like 150 short stories, give or take.
Wow.
Uh, well, just under probably 150 short stories,
Yeah.
29 novels, you know.
Yeah. Well, I'd always wished that Hal had written more. Like, on the one hand, I wish that he'd written more, but on the other hand, for collection purposes, I'm glad he didn't write more. You know what I mean? But, like, his full-time job was a teacher. He was a teacher and he just wrote on the side. So, but Simak made that his main source of income for a long time, didn't he? Writing stories and books and things. Wasn't that his main source of income for a number of years?
Not until he retired.
Oh,
His main
really?
source of income was journalism.
Oh, okay. I see. I thought you meant that when he retired, journalism was his main source of income.
No, no, no.
Oh, okay.
Because yeah, from in 1939, I think it was 39. So this is kind of interesting. It coincides with the golden age of science fiction. He started uh, a full time job at the Minneapolis Star Tribune in
Hmm.
Minneapolis, and he stayed there until 1976, 77, 78. I can't remember his end year. And before
Interesting.
that, he was from about 1929. He was working journalism as smaller companies. He got to a syndicate company who had lots of newspapers around the Midwest, and he was sent around to newspapers like into Iowa and Michigan and places, and they were either failing newspapers, and he was supposed to prop them up and get them, change them from dailies to weeklies or weeklies to dailies, or
Hmm.
shut them down.
Oh,
And
interesting.
so, and it was interesting. In the early '90s, I spoke to a printer who was on one of the papers. I think in Iowa, was it Iowa or Missouri or Iowa? He was the printer. He printed the newspaper, and he was like 90 some years old at that point,
Wow.
because it was the early '90s, and he remembered Simak, and he said, "Oh, he was such a nice guy," and he had no idea that he'd become a writer, like became known as a fiction writer at all.
Wow.
So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was which where it was. Um, I can't remember which newspaper it was, but yeah, but he was sent around to do this kind of thing, and then like I say, and then he lucked into the job at Minneapolis Star Tribune. And then he became the editor of the science section, and he did science stories, and he wrote a bunch of stuff. So a lot of the stories, like he covered the stories of their finding sort of early man stuff and mastodons and things like that in Wisconsin and Minneapolis or Minnesota, and that influenced some of his writing.
Interesting. Nice.
So at least I think it has, because he wrote about it, he did it, and then he wrote stories.
Yeah. Hmm.
So
Which makes sense. Yeah.
and then he wrote he wrote 4 nonfiction books, 2 astronomy, or is it 3? Yeah, 2 astronomy, yeah, 1 paleontology, trilobite, dinosaur, and man, and then prehistoric man. You bought that for me, the prehistoric man one, for my birthday a couple years ago.
Did I? I don't
Yeah,
remember it. I'd have to see the cover to remember.
it's a skull. It's a skull.
Oh, okay. I'll
It's got
take
a
your word
bad
for it. I don't remember.
it's got a badly sun's spine, but it was the only copy that I could find. Oh, there's one I still need to get, the first one. I need to get that one,
Mm.
but it's quite elusive.
It's elusive. Yeah.
And
Okay. Well, I'm starting to get tired. I'm having the downside of having drank 2 of those apple hard lemonades now. So yeah, I'm gonna need to get off here before I start nodding off.
yeah, everybody needs to know that Brandy's a cheap drunk.
Indeed.
Well, bye everybody. Thanks for stopping by. And you're on next week or not?
Yeah, I'll be on next week. I'm not going back to work until the 15th of July. I'm on vacation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
All right.
thanks everybody for stopping by.
Okay.